I'm Bambi Francisco for Vader TV, the network for innovators, and I'm speaking with Matt Colburn. He's the CEO and founder of Co-Comment. It's a company that lets you track your conversations across the web. It also powers conversations for 1,500 sites across the web. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much indeed.
I remember a year ago, I was still at Dow Jones Market Watch, and we didn't even have comments on the site. And now you look across the web, and it's a big part of the content. It's a big part of well, it's the conversation, it's the extended dialogue on top of that piece of content. So you've been observing this for a year now, or 18 months or so. So I don't know, can you give us some statistics on, how many comments on average are left on pieces of content, or how many page views, additional page views do comments actually create for sites?
I mean, that varies, as you might imagine, a huge amount. It's anywhere from you could double your traffic, you could get 10 times the traffic, maybe you could get 20-30%. It very much depends on the audience. We just went live on the blog of quite a well-known author and controversial blogger, and there we saw a 70% increase in the page view traffic literally in 2 days. So that was probably a great result. Other sites it'll maybe be 20-30%, but it very much depends on what's the content, how active is the audience, how much do they want to respond.
Yeah, I mean, to me it's almost like a bar. You can have all these different bars, and but one always attracts everyone. And you can look across the blogosphere, and you have so many sites that are really that do really well. Even if you just look at the sites around technology, but yet you've got I have to say TechCrunch. I mean, definitely attracts a huge audience of people who love to comment, and I'm not sure what the trick is there, because the other sites definitely create some great content. Is there some sort of trick to it besides seeding it with comments?
Well, I mean, I would say this, but it actually is one of the USPs of Co-Comment, that we don't just have technology to offer sites, we have an audience. In other words, guess what audience tends to use a comment tracking and management solution? People who leave a lot of comments. So when we go to a site and say, hey, would you like to have conversations on your site, we'll power it for you, we tend to say, okay, we have the discussions about the implementation and the look and the feel and exactly how the operation is going to work. But then also what becomes of interest is the audience. Is this going to actually get me a bigger audience? Is this going to get the active commenters? Because the reality is it's 15-20% of the audience is generating the vast majority of the comments, but other people are really interested in reading it. It's extending and enhancing content. How do people,
you have 3 million unique visitors, how are people going onto your site and using your site and finding conversations to sort of jump in and participate in?
They're mostly following other people around. So although we have a search capability, people tend not to use that for conversations, because that presupposes that you know what you want to discuss and where you want to discuss it, which of course people don't frequently. So what tends to happen instead is people spot that somebody else is conversing in the same kind of place or has got something particularly interesting to say, and then what Co-Comment allows them to do is to follow that individual to other locations. So what you get is the effect whereby all you need to do is get 1 or 2 people to discover that there's interesting content, to leave a couple of interesting comments, and then you can suck an audience.
Who is the biggest following? How many followers?
I think the biggest following is over 500.
And what is she? Why does he have
It's an anonymous ID. I don't actually know who that person is. They've not chosen to have an
prolific.
ID.
He's profound, funny. Why does he have followers?
I think he's interesting. Interesting.
He's
interesting
active.
And controversial.
Okay. I guess, how do you get someone to be a prolific commentator? How do you provide them incentives? Or maybe there is no incentive, it's just there's some people who just love to chat.
We've done a few initiatives to try and get people to comment more.
What works and what doesn't work?
You know what? I don't know. I wish I did.
Gold star?
I think people who comment and produce great content are interested in, and a sort of certain degree of approbation for that, and interest in what they have to say, which seems to be far more compelling than anything we can do to promote it. So it's not to say what we do doesn't work in terms of artificially pushing people to comment, but actually the best way to get somebody to comment is to put them into an active environment where other people are commenting. And after a while, guess what? They start doing it. I mean, case in point, my 71-year-old mother, not particularly web savvy, but quite comfortable with the idea of writing letters to newspapers in response to articles. Got her using co-comment, pointed her at interesting conversations and other interesting commenters, and then after a while was absolutely amazed to discover that she'd actually become quite prolific in leaving comments across the web, because that was what other people were doing. So I think probably the best way to get people to do it is to expose them to an environment where other people are doing it, and where they kind of go, yes, what I have to say is of interest, it's as valid as what other people have to say, and if I make particularly pithy, interesting, or indeed controversial points, guess what? I'll get some attention.
What's the most surprising thing you've learned about sort of human nature?
The sheer breadth of views. I think for me the really interesting thing is co-comment allows you to discover people who've got, who are interacting in similar conversations, and there's a natural assumption, I think, to assume that because you connect with somebody in one area, that there's probably far more degree of commonality than necessarily exists, and to discover that actually when you see what else those people are saying in other places, you go, wow, that's very different. So you get exposed to a breadth of opinions and views that
and maybe
probably you wouldn't
news,
otherwise
would they
have
use
done.
it as a breaking news platform too?
Well, we're doing at the moment a number of initiatives associated with news and releases, because what typically happens when people send out particularly releases is they get posted in thousands and thousands of different places, and if you want to get any feedback, you've actually got to go to all those thousands of different places. Now, we could do that. I mean, co-comment allows you to do that.
Sure.
But actually, we're looking at an even more sophisticated way of doing it, where you embed the conversation into the actual piece of content, and then irrespective of where it's displayed, there's one conversation.
One question, maybe it's somewhat of a business question. Do you allow people to edit their comments, delete their comments, and also do you allow the publisher to delete, say, profanity?
3 different questions, and the answer is...
3 different answers?
Depends, yes.
Okay, sometimes they allow you to.
So basically, can a user edit their comment
and
or delete their comment? Absolutely, yes. They can delete it from co-comment. We can't control whether they can delete it from the site.
Just wondering what the norm and
it.
standard around comments, or is there such a thing these days?
Typically, there's in the blogosphere there's the expectation that comments are not deleted or edited, and that instead what you would do is post a correction. In other words,
Sure.
So there's a lot of sites, for example, where you can edit it for a given period, but after a certain period, essentially it's become part of the historical record.
But right now, there's really no standard.
But there's not really a standard. We take the view that all the data in our system is owned either by the site, if that's what the terms of service of the site is, or it's owned by the end user if we're powering it ourselves. And therefore, if the user comes to us and says, "Please delete all my comments," we'll do so.
Okay. Well, we wish you the best of luck with your site. It's a great idea. Be the repository of comments or managing conversations, which I'm sure will only get bigger and more popular. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks very much indeed.
I've been speaking with Matt Colburn. He's the CEO and founder of co-comment. I'm Bambi Francisco.